Greetings collectors and welcome to today's retro game review. It's back to 1991 again today to revisit another toe-plan shoot-'em-up for the Sega Mega Drive. Nowadays more famous for its highly entertaining Engrish sections, let's revisit this classic to see what it has to offer in the way of arcade-to-home action. Buckle up, as all your base are belong to us in Zero Wing. As previously covered, the arcade hits of Truxton and Fireshark formed the vertical shooter arm of Toplan's arcade to Sega 16-bit strategy. When it came to the horizontal shooters, Hellfire was paired with Zero Wing. Effectively, Truxton and Fireshark were variants of each other, whilst Hellfire and Zero Wing were then buddied up as two sister games. This wasn't uncommon for games back in the 80s and early 90s. These games originated from the hardware of the arcade, and hardware was potentially expensive, so anywhere that similar chips and motherboards could be used was taken. Konami were a prime example of this. Their brawlers such as Simpsons Arcade, X-Men Arcade, and the Turtles arcade game all share striking similarities, as was the case with many of Toplan's shooter series. What this led to were game conversions to Sega's 16-bit console as well as the PC engine. In this era, Sega's games dominated the arcade, so it was natural for these arcade-based games to strike the relationship with Sega to be brought into the home. Now, for anyone interested in retro games, you'll all know about the classic translations from Zero Wing. Quite frankly, the whole of the opening sequence is hilarious due to the translations. The phrase, "all your base are belong to us," became a widespread internet meme that lives on to this day. Generally, almost all of the English translation though is enough to generate a good laugh. It's the fact that there's something very serious going on, like an invasion at the start of an intergalactic war, yet you have characters with such humorous dialogue. It's the contrast of light and dark that sets the humour levels off. Ironically, I think that actually gives the game a lift and adds a certain charm and appeal to it. As you can see from the animation, Zero Wing is actually really well animated and cinematic in nature. I'll set the backstory up for you via the box text. Katz, the leader of a band of swashbuckling space pirates, is terrorising the galaxy. You must pilot the only remaining Milky Way attack craft in combat and stop Katz and his buccaneers. So basically what we have here is a one-man assault to repel space pirates. Good stuff. It's the same story as literally every other space shooter of the era, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The fact that the space pirate is called Katz is just a bonus. So, how does it play? Well, in truth, it's very much the slower brother of Hellfire. You will have the opportunity to pick up a variety of red, blue or green weapons, each with their own special shot type. You will then power them up by collecting another orb of the same colour. The issue I have here is that there's not much of an incentive to switch colour of your weapon. In Hellfire, it was essential to toggle through the weapon types depending on the enemy type. The weapon mechanic was well ingrained in the game strategy. With Zero Wing though, you only ever need pick up the green weapon upgrades in my opinion. Why? Well, simply put, the green rockets not only cover half of the screen, but they also act as homing missiles. I appreciate that I'm showing game footage of easy mode, but even still, use the green weapon and auto-fire and you're pretty much set for the rest of the game. The game is also far less technical than Hellfire. Zero Wing plays a little slower, less frantic, and there's certainly not as much thinking to do. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. For those looking for a more chilled out retro shooter, I dare say that you'll really get on well with Zero Wing. For those that already have a taste for more high-octane action though, Zero Wing is likely to leave you a little underwhelmed. The game does look great though, bold sprites, decent sound effects, and an overall good solid feel to the game. As with Hellfire, Zero Wing does have a very capable soundtrack. The soundtrack is available via the options menu, so you can use the game as a jukebox if you crave that hit of 90s electronica. In terms of a physical release, Sega collectors will be very familiar with the format in the standard black plastic case. The artwork is surprisingly bland when you hold it up against the other toe-plan shooters, just a spacecraft with a generic boss in the background. What's unusual here is the collector's price. I've seen the UK PAL edition sell for around £60 here in the UK. That's getting on for around $70 US. Even a loose cartridge can set you back around £15 British. By all accounts though, you should be able to get hold of this one in box for around the £20 to £30 British mark. Unfortunately for collectors, Zero Wing has become a victim of inflated pricing in my opinion. With the entertaining English memes so well known, I dare say that the game has attracted notoriety and therefore demand. For the same price, you could have your pick of dozens of better shooters on the system. Zero Wing struggles to justify its asking price in my opinion. Given the choice, Truxton and Hellfire both deliver more in the way of true arcade action thrills. It's this theme that runs throughout Zero Wing. Sure, there are weapon upgrades and boss fights, but they all feel a little muted when you compare them to other games of the era. Here is the Hellfire Level 1 boss. Now compare to Zero Wing's Level 1 boss. Whilst both running on the same specification, it's just clear that Zero Wing lacks that certain something to make it stand out as a shooter, which is a real shame, as it's overall very solid and doesn't do anything wrong. The issue though is that it doesn't do anything to make you love it either. The design of the game seems to be playing it very safe in most areas. Take away the soundtrack and the excellent cutscenes, and Zero Wing may lack mass appeal due to the gameplay. Zero Wing is a game that I really want to enjoy, as I'm a big fan of shooters, especially when they have emerged from Japanese arcade origins. I just can't help feel though that there's a reason gamers focus in on the amusing dialogue, and that's perhaps because without it, it's unlikely that this game would have become so well known in the mainstream community without it. If you decide to pick up Zero Wing, you won't hate it by any means. It's fun, simple to play, reasonably entertaining, and you'll certainly enjoy the soundtrack. However, you may resent having to pay the extortionate collector's price for this largely run-of-the-mill experience. Zero Wing is still a game worth revisiting, and does have something to offer for those collectors curious about toe-plan shooter games. If you can afford it, the jump to Hellfire is well worth it. As a backup experience, Zero Wing does get the job done though, for some somewhat muted arcade action. Gamers may not celebrate the gameplay of Zero Wing, but we all certainly enjoy the dialogue. Hello again, I hope you enjoyed today's show and thank you for the view. Remember, you can always comment, like, subscribe and find us on the social media sites below. Happy collecting!